Good evening, afternoon, and good morning to everyone. My name is Jonathan Braden. I'm a writer with the Global Catholic Climate Movement. Welcome to the Season of Creation show, our final edition. Hard to believe that we're towards the end of the annual celebration of prayer and action for our common home, but here we are. Thank you again for joining us. We're so thrilled that you are with us. And we have a special guest coming up later, so stick around for that, of course, the highlight of the show. We will get right into what we missed last week. Let me share here. Not what we missed, but what happened last week during the ecumenical season of creation. Bit of a preview for everyone. So last week we had the second to last just transition from fossil fuels took place. This was a powerful one because it looked at Europe's role in a just transition, Europe's responsibility to its people and to the world. What does Europe owe the world in looking at a just transition from fossil fuels? We are shortly going to hear from, it featured global experts from around the world, but especially we'll hear from, in a little bit here, we'll hear from Sister Alessandra Smerilali. She's with the Vatican COVID-19 Commission. She's an economist and a coordinator of the Vatican's Commission for COVID-19 Economics Task Force. She's also a member of the Scientific and Organizing Committee of the Catholic Social Works. And she talks about Pope Francis' effort to help the just transition during the COVID-19 pandemic. And again, this to set the stage, this is looking at what responsibility does Europe owe the world for a just transition, looking at from the context of Europe with the world's third largest economy by continent and nearly 750 million. So it can clearly do a lot of good for the world. So we'll hear from Sister Alessandra. Nope. There we go. We are going to fix that technical difficulty. I did it before as well. Apologies. Share audio. There we go. Sister Alessandra will be speaking. Apologies, folks. And again, I was looking at Europe's responsibility. What does Europe owe the world when you look at its role in a just transition? I guess the difficulty, there we go. Okay, there we go, apologies.
Pope Francis said, one does not emerge from a crisis the same as before. The pandemic is a crisis. We emerge from a crisis either better or worse than before. Is it up to us to choose? So we can choose. We don't believe to that narrative. We can make a better world. Everything will be equal. Pope Francis says it cannot be equal. It's up to us to choose what we are going to do. So our motto, the motto Pope Francis has given to us is prepare the future.
Prepare the future. From Sister Alessandra, Prepare the Future. She also called on the European Central Bank to incorporate the objective of full employment, in which all potential labor resources would be used efficiently. Next, during the Season of Creation webinar, we will hear from Lydia Machaca. Lydia is the Climate and Energy Officer at SIDSI, which is an international family of Catholic social organizations working for transformational change. And here, Lydia will talk about the need to hold companies accountable for the damage they have inflicted upon creation.
Or what happens when companies undermine human rights. And this is an example of Samarco mining dam in Mariana in Brazil. In 2015, this dam burst in the municipality of Mariana, and millions of cubics of iron mining tailings from the mine operated by the company Samarco created a flood that destroyed the entire village, including schools, churches, and contaminated the Gualaco do Norte and Camo and Doce rivers. So it is very important that to highlight that irresponsible companies that increasingly act in violation of human rights and continue to increase violence and suffering of people on the planet needs to be held accountable.
And that was Lydia Machaca of SIDSI. Lydia went on to say we need collective effort and at the same time, a just transition to cleaner and more resilient energy system shouldn't leave anyone behind. This week, the final week of Season of Creation, we will host the last Just Transition from Fossil Fuels, the last season Just Transition Season of Creation webinar. As you see, this will be a Just Transition from North America. Home to 3 of the 15 biggest economies in the world, North America can show the world how to create a just transition towards a cleaner and safer future. We'll hear from the 3 experts on your screen. This will take place Thursday at 10 p.m. Pacific time. So that's 1 p.m. New York, 1800 hours London, 1900 hours Rome. Important note, the webinar is in English, but simultaneously interpreted to Spanish, French, Italian, Portuguese, all for free. There are your times. And really important make sure you make time for that. It should be really, especially with the US elections coming forward, it'll be kind of what is next for the US and how the US can bring about, North America can bring about a just transition. You can register here, bit.ly/SOC North America 2020. Also coming up this week, Sunday, October 4th, is the Global Ecumenical Online Prayer Service on the Feast of St. Francis of Assisi, the feast day of St. Francis of Assisi. It should be a magical, transformational, inspirational day. Encourage everyone to take part in this. Such a great moment when the ecumenical community, as they have been doing throughout the Season of Creation, can come together. And we look forward to seeing you on that day as well. But now we will shift gears, and we have a special guest, as I mentioned earlier, who knows a thing or two about St. Francis of Assisi. Before I do that, if you're watching from home, wherever you are, be sure to say where you're from. If you have comments about Season of Creation, maybe share how you're feeling this evening, morning, or good afternoon. Be sure to show that in the comments section. And without further ado, we welcome Father Jacek Orzechowski. He is joining us from North Carolina in the U.S. So good afternoon, correct, Father? How are you?
Well, good afternoon. Welcome. Peace and all good to everyone.
And we were chatting earlier. You're in North Carolina, right? Durham?
Yes, in Durham, North Carolina. I just moved in.
Yeah, very nice. I have to say, you made excellent work of your background. Very impressive work there. So it looks like a studio already, I think. Melita says hi from South Africa. Hello, Melita. Thanks for joining us. Father Jacek, we wanted to talk about can talk about anything, of course, but the season of creation obviously has such a meaning to yourself as a Franciscan friar, and trying to embody those values during the season of creation to you. But to you, what does the season of creation kind of mean or embody as we head into the final week?
Mm-hmm. Well, I consider the season of creation as a great gift from God, a wonderful opportunity for Christians, not only Catholics, but and people of goodwill, to be reconnected with God, and with to retrieve our faith and tradition as it relates to our deep connection within God's community, Earth's community of life. Oftentimes, over the past centuries, we have, as the churches, reduce faith or religion more to relationship between an individual and God, or the human family, and have somehow glossed over the relationship with the rest of God's creation. So it's a time for reawakening, for reconciliation. It's opportunity to open up the eyes. Jesus came to open up the eyes of the blind, and there are a lot of things that have blinded us. And one of them has been the spiritual and moral, religious dimension of our relationship with Mother Sister Earth.
Yeah, definitely. What has blinded us then, and you think, with our relationship? What's the biggest thing that's blinded us, you think, in our relationship with creation? I mean, we're looking to repair and restore our relationship with creation and the ties that bond us through celebration, conversion, and commitment during the season. What's the biggest thing that you have seen in your experience all around the world that has blinded us in our way of how we treat creation, and why we need to restore that?
Mm-hmm. I would say two things that blind us collectively. One is a certain truncated understanding of our Christian tradition, understanding in which the relationship with the earth has been peripheral, to say at least. And now we are going back to our roots, Christian roots, and recognizing that care for the earth is part and parcel of what it means to be Christian, to be a follower of Jesus. So there's one. So there's kind of that blindness of being disconnected from our tradition. And then there's another thing that has blinded us as people, and that is a certain consumerism, the politics of exploitation. What's in it for me, and our economy, the economic political systems that we have been part of have kind of blinded us to the nature of who we are as human beings. In other words, those systems, dominant economic political systems, have seen perceived human being as a purely kind of individual, as a consumer, and now we are rediscovering what it means to be truly human, what it means to be connected, a person in the relationship with the rest of the human family, with the Earth's community of life. So we are, in my opinion, are gaining a little bit more kind of critical look at the systems that, in many ways, well, kind of there are some good things about kind of the material prosperity, but at the same time have alienated us. And now we are beginning to bring some critical evaluation and balance.
Mm-hmm. And part of that is, I mean, obviously with the climate crisis, our eyes have been opened to what is happening to the world. And also another part of it, as Pope Francis talks about in Laudato Si, is hearing the cry of the poor, of course, the cry of the earth and the cry of the poor. How have you, making it, without a doubt, I mean, it's a moral issue with creation, but making it our most vulnerable, our sisters and brothers are enduring the worst effects of this. How have you seen how climate change is affecting the poor and the most vulnerable in your work? We should say you grew up in Poland, came to the US later on in life, but of course have been all around the world. So how have you seen that in your work?
Mm-hmm. So thank you for the question. I want to share with you all just one specific example. I have been blessed with being able to serve the immigrant community in the United States, metropolitan DC area, now in North Carolina. And I have also been to the border, also to Central America, that have been impacted in profound ways by climate crises. So, for example, when was it? Over a year ago, I was, as part of my work with in Catholic Charities on the border in Arizona, and the indigenous members of the indigenous communities from Guatemala fleeing, well, violence, but also climate disaster. They said, well, Padre, la tierra ya no da. The earth doesn't produce. Sometimes we didn't even have enough water for ourselves to drink. This is right now the second largest factor for forcing people to migrate from Central America is climate crises in the dry corridor that is forcing huge numbers of people to leave. Now they are exercising their right to life, so to be able to provide for themselves and their children. And I know that in many parts of the world, Africa, in large parts of Middle East and Asia, that's a very recurring theme. I have seen refugees from sub-Saharan Africa in Morocco trying to get into Europe. And well, there are many different factors, but one of them more and more is a climate crisis, something that has been brought about by human activities, in countries like United States, Europe in particular, and Pope Francis calls us to restorative justice. So, and also I would like to share with you about what does it have to do with Saint Francis. Sometimes we look at Saint Francis, or we can have images of Francis in the bird bath and over sentimentalize, but Francis was the one who encountered the presence of Christ in in the embrace of the lepers, of the poor and marginalized. In our day and age, we are also called to that encounter. How? Well, by paying attention to the cry of the poor, the cry of our Mother Sister Earth, and to look at the symptoms, but also at the causes, to listen to the stories of particular people. And also, kind of for me, to not only to hear the cry of the poor and the cry of the planet, but also to look for opportunities or for the signs of the kingdom of God breaking in, the signs of hope, the hope that I see in many young people taking a lead in dealing with climate crises, calling for transformation of one's individual consciousness, but also public policies. Okay, I cannot.
There we go. There you go. Sorry about that. There you go. Let's stay on that point then, because so often we talk about the problems and what needs to be done, but you are seeing, and all of us are seeing, signs of hope, of course. What are some other examples that fill you with hope and that are God's kingdom kind of breaking through?
Mm-hmm. For me, it's people making connections between different issues, between, for example, the struggle for environmental justice and the struggle for racial justice. I see, for example, in young people from from the Sunrise Movement being on the front line of pushing for systemic changes in the public policies of the United States for a Green New Deal, but also being in solidarity with Black Lives Matter movement and seeing the connection between racial and environmental justice. So I see that happening more and more at the level of parishes.
Mm-hmm.
That'll be one sign of hope, or people asking questions, deeper questions about, especially in the United States, what does it mean to be pro-life in an authentic, integral, coherent way that is also about restoring our relationship with God's creation. It's saying yes to doing what we can to preserve biodiversity, to stave off climate catastrophe, and avoiding the binary thinking about kind of either or.
Mm-hmm. Either or, as in what exactly?
Well, there are some people that say there are some that are concerned about saving the polar bears and not looking at human dignity.
Mm-hmm.
For me and for many others, it's about both. It's about individual choices that we make, and also about public policy. It's about contemplation, and it's about kind of political action. It's about agitation, and it's not either or, but both.
Mm-hmm. There we go. Well, not a political answer, but I like the both. Not picking or the other. But while we're here, I mean, you mentioned what it is, and it's probably on a lot of people's minds as Christians throughout the U.S. and all people throughout the U.S. and other countries consider elections. What does it mean to be of pro-life?
For me, and for, well, not just for me, but I believe that being pro-life means following in the footsteps of Jesus, who was the Prince of Peace, who was the way of justice, of mercy, of compassion, who was described as the truth. And it's worthwhile to think about, what does it mean to seek the truth in the age of being bombarded by misinformation and propaganda, and life not only for the unborn, the future generations, but also for the Earth's community of life. We are all profoundly interconnected, and so there is to be pro-life is to kind of follow in the footsteps of Jesus, and to be pay attention to life, to what's going on the ground. Sometimes, I had to I have to respond to the people who don't see eye to eye, or who object to me being vocal about issues around climate justice, and who perceive my statements, what I do, what I say, as kind of political. And I say, no, this is the gospel perspective. It comes not out of ideology, but being in touch with the grassroots, with what's happening, with the voices of the poor in Central America, with the clamor of refugees from Africa, with the voices of people in countries such as Philippines and Australia. What's going on? And to be suspicious of the kind of ideologies that somehow blind us and impose their kind of myopic view on things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's not. It's multi-layered. It's complex. It's complicated. It's not an easy, obviously, a one-sentence solution or one-sentence answer. I mean,
and also the next thing, just to be, what does it mean to be pro-life? Is to be a person of hope. To understand that this world is kind of work in progress. It's evolving, but that that God of justice, God of life, will have the last word. So, and that means that we must not sacrifice the integrity of the gospel, the integrity of the witness of Jesus for political expediency.
mm-hmm. How, and when you just go back to or stay on that topic, I mean, when you talk about life-giving measures for the creation, how do you and how can people work to embed actual examples into their life, and how do you go about doing that throughout your life? What are some ways that someone listening or watching this, tomorrow can start to live in a more life-giving way to creation?
Mm-hmm.
On a day-to-day basis, or even however you feel. And thank you, Karen from Nashville, tuning in here.
Well, allowing oneself to be evangelized by the poor, by creation, spending time kind of out in nature, soaking that in. Pope Francis, for example, in Laudato Si, speaks about how mountains and the soil and the forests are a sign of God's love, as if a caress of God. No, so falling in love with God through God's creation. It's about figuring out, okay, what can I do to make a difference in my personal life? Not just kind of recycle, but eat less meat. So this is something that I'm working on and been challenged by other people. It's about reaching out to fellow Christians and engaging one's parish, talking to one's faith leaders, doing things together, supporting young people in their struggle for climate justice, be vocal. And also, especially as we come closer to the election here in the United States, vote. For me, we are at such a critical time of there is so much at stake, and protecting our common home is, I would say, kind of fundamental right to life issue, moral issue that we confront. And to reach out, engage people who don't maybe necessarily see eye to eye, and engaging them in conversation, kind of about it, and voting with integrity.
Mm-hmm. So we heard it's not only an individual response, but also you want to, of course, bring your community and challenge your community and try to make change within your community as well.
Yeah. Pray and agitate.
Pray and agitate. I like that. We say welcome to Maria from Brazil, Jackson House from Marseille, France, also watching in. If there's any questions from people watching, feel free, of course, to put them in the chat, and we will pose them. We won't keep them here all afternoon, but we will make time for it. Well, right on cue. We have a question from Melita. Hopefully I'm saying that right. Melita, perhaps. What does it mean to seek climate justice? I've noticed a shift in dialogue. I'll put that on the screen too, maybe you can see it. I've noticed a shift in dialogue from using the term climate change to climate justice. Is it possible to unpack this a little?
Mm-hmm.
So what does it mean to seek climate justice? I think maybe is the gist.
Mm-hmm. Well, climate justice, that term puts a certain emphasis on who are those impacted by climate change, climate emergency. It's there are some that within that term may refer to intergenerational justice, how what we do, what we fail to do impacts future generations, and what ought our actions, collective actions, be in terms of the energy policy, the economic policy. What does it mean? Climate justice, restorative, racial justice. How certain people of color being disproportionately impacted by climate emergency. We already seen that in so many different places. So again, it's a way to connect, to frame a closer connection between the cry of the poor and the cry of the earth, and overcome this binary thinking that it's either or. It's both. Just like in Christianity, we say that Jesus Christ is both human and divine, and without saying, well, either or. That's a false choice.
Mm-hmm. And justice in the sense of doing what is right for those people, I guess, as well, right? Just to kind of make sure we're understanding. If there are other questions, feel free to put them in. And Father Jacek, I think you said you have worked in parishes and you're working at a parish now, correct, as well?
Yes, I just became a pastor 2 weeks ago at the Immaculate Conception Church in Durham, North Carolina. So.
And how is a season of creation there?
We are, there are a number of people who are now taking Laudato Si and Integral Ecology online course that I helped to organize. And now we're looking into, what can we do? What can we do to switch to renewable energy? So I certainly, as pastor, will be supporting my fellow parishioners, and we need to serve by example as well.
Mm-hmm. And I was going just go ahead, sir.
Part of the season of creation is raising awareness about the importance of voting in November election.
And all up and down the ballot, local, state for the U.S. Obviously, we're talking here, and national, of course. But
yes,
yeah. And I wanted to bring up. I'll share my screen here. Bring up the online course, and if you want to walk us through, if anyone's like what you've heard, thank you, Carrie Lee, listening in from Oakland, California. Melita, we heard from you in South Africa. Anyone listening in and wants to hear more from Father Jacek, I'm going to share my screen here.
So we put together that online course, and we had about over 1,600 people that signed up. So we'll have it. It's already closed, so
okay.
But later on, I think past December, we'll make it also available on our Franciscan Laudato Si Revolution, and inviting also you to join in. And there's a number of other initiatives that we are getting ready for.
Yes, as I said, go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, but I mean, within that course, for example, we have voices of Franciscan scholars and scientists. We have a Jewish environmental leader and Muslim leader, young people. For example, there's a young man who is local leader in Sunrise Movement, championing Green New Deal. We touch on what does it mean to be authentically pro-life, 100%, not just kind of selectively. We have a young man who, Stephen Kazamutima, for example, from Kenya, Franciscan family in JPEG family in Africa, that talks about Laudato Si, an issue of climate justice from the perspective of global South. Again, from the perspective, dealing with issue of the connection between climate justice and race, and the need to approach it from the perspective of systemic racism. So helping people to think critically, to connect, it's very incarnational.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, I am taking it. I just started taking it as well, and you look familiar. You're in this course, I think, right?
Well, yeah.
Thank you for Elena tuning in from Croatia. Lejeta from Paraguay. And yes, we have a question actually from Elena, and then we'll let you get going. Father Jacek, I'm sure you have a busy day ahead of you. Elena says, Elena, apologies if I'm mispronouncing your name. I think that our time is the time of St. Francis again, like in the 13th century. Are other pastors and your friars familiar with the encyclical Laudato Si?
Well, I hope so, but it's work in progress. I think that I'm very grateful to Global Catholic Climate Movement that is also helping to hold up the vision of the gospel, so many insights that Pope Francis expressed in Laudato Si. But as Franciscan family, we are working on it to go, delving deeper into it and putting into practice.
A work in progress, as you said, right? Like everything, like all of us. So very good. Well, Father Jacek, thank you so much for joining. Thanks to everyone else tuning in the chat. The questions are great. Audience is great. Thank you so much. And if they want to find more of your thoughts, work, or learn more about Franciscan values, I think they can go to franciscanaction.org. Where would you send them?
Well, Laudato Si Revolution. And I think there's some hashtag, but look it up, and we are putting a lot of information on it. Again, work in progress. So I hope that we'll stay connected.
Very good. We will have to do this again, maybe in a different format, maybe in the show, but we shall chat. Thank you so much again for joining us, Father. Pleasure.
Peace and all good.
Take care. Thank you, everyone. Have a blessed rest of the season of creation. We will talk soon. God bless.